Okay, next dinim here is the dinim of tzedakah. Okay, there's a positive mitzvah in the Torah. You have to give tzedakah. It says, "B'sech tiftach es yadcha." You have to give the mitzvah of tzedakah. Now, if somebody asks you for tzedakah and you don't give it to them, so then you're also transgressing a negative commandment, because the Torah says, you shouldn't harden your heart from giving tzedakah. Now, obviously, that's if somebody is asking you for tzedakah because they need the money. If they need the money to buy drugs, then you don't have an obligation to give them at all, and you shouldn't give them. But there is a positive mitzvah in the Torah of giving tzedakah.
What if they're not drugs, they just shouldn't ask for it, they ask for it? Nothing to do with drugs.
I know, somebody doesn't need the money, but they ask for it. So the Gemara says, first we'll learn that din later. First, so the Gemara says, when Shulchan Aruch brings down, a person that asks for tzedakah when he doesn't need it will eventually need it. In other words, he's bringing it upon himself. Well, let's take it a different way. Let's take this a different way. I think it's very important to keep one very important point in mind. Hashem works what's called midah keneged midah, deed for deed. When we ask Hashem in davening for all the 19 brachas of Shemoneh Esrei and everything else we ask for, we also are asking, we don't necessarily deserve it. We ask Hashem, I want this, and I want that, and I want this. Maybe you don't need it. If you needed it, maybe Hashem would give it to you. Maybe the reason Hashem is not giving it to you because you don't need it. So now we are asking Hashem to give us things that Hashem says maybe you probably don't need it. So if we act to a person that we say, oh, this guy doesn't need it, so why should I give it to him? Then Hashem will say the same thing to us.
That's if they're sincere. The guy that comes to sometimes whatever, he doesn't need it. He throws it. He's whatever.
So then they're not well. It's a different story.
He walks out of here with $100, and that money could have been put towards a family that really needs it.
You know what? We are not the ones to judge who needs, who doesn't need. Somebody asks, he gives. So therefore, when we ask, Hashem gives us too. If we want Hashem to be picky with us, then we should be picky with other people. And then we're picky with other people, Hashem will be picky with us. That's the way it works. Anyway, it's also like this. It says tzedakah is a sign for the children of Avraham Avinu who did tzedakah. The chair of the Yidden and the true religion only stands in the merit of tzedakah. Tzedakah is greater than all the sacrifices. These are all they bring down psukim for this. The Yidden are not redeemed only in the merit of tzedakah. A person never gets poor from tzedakah. Nothing bad ever happens by giving tzedakah. Whoever has pity on others, Hashem has pity on us. It says in other places, the Alter Rebbe brings this down in Tanya, that when it says in Yerushalmi, the whole Talmud Yerushalmi, when it says the word mitzvah, many times it says just mitzvah. What mitzvah is it talking about? So it says it's the mitzvah of tzedakah. Because tzedakah is equal, here he says in Kitzur from Psukim that it refers to equal to all korbanos. But tzedakah is equal to all mitzvahs. And one of the reasons why tzedakah is equal to all mitzvahs, even though you do tzedakah with your hand, so why is it different than tefillin that you do with your hand? But the answer is that the money you gave to tzedakah is money that you worked for. And that working was done with your entire body. So therefore, when somebody gives tzedakah, they're actually giving from the work of their entire body, which is unique, that only that mitzvah is from the entire body. So therefore, tzedakah is equal to all mitzvahs, and Hashem listens to the people that ask for tzedakah. And you have to keep in mind, he says, Kitzur is often Kitzur, that you should keep in mind that life is a wheel of fortune that comes and goes. One day you have, one day you don't have, one day, you can never tell. So a person should, now, the person also gives all in Kitzur. A person shouldn't say, okay, but why should I give him money? It's my money. Why do I have to give it to him? So the answer is that it's not our money. It's Hashem's money. Hashem is entrusting us. We are the estate manager of Hashem. So Hashem gives us X amount of money, everybody on their own level, and Hashem says, you are my manager, you are my business manager, or financial planner of how to give out my money. It's not your money, Hashem says, it's my money. And that explains why Rebbe, the Gemara says, Rebbe Mechabed Ashirim, Rebbe would respect wealthy people. It's not because, unfortunately, it's not because wealthy people are better or smarter or whatever it is. But Rebbe said, if Hashem entrusted a person with a larger portfolio of Hashem's to plan, to manage, so obviously the person has some merit, or he could have such a merit, to know how to do it, to know what to do with the money. So it says that tzedakah pushes away bad decrees. The Gemara says tzedakah tatzel me, it's a pasuk, but tzedakah tatzel me mavis, tzedakah saves a person from death. That's why when people are sick, you give money to tzedakah, or like we spoke about Yizkor, the main part of Yizkor is not the prayer of Yizkor. It says in Shulchan Aruch to give the tzedakah, which is pledged at the time of Yizkor. Bottom line is, tzedakah is a very important mitzvah. So now the question is, the famous question, why don't we make a bracha on the mitzvah of tzedakah? It's a positive mitzvah. If it's a positive mitzvah, then we should make a bracha on the mitzvah of tzedakah. So the answer is, the Rashba, it's a famous tshuva in the Rashba says, because the mitzvah of tzedakah is dependent on somebody else. A mitzvah that's dependent on somebody else, you can't make a bracha on. Why? Because the din is like this. You have to make a bracha before you do the mitzvah. Right? Like we know, before you tie the knot to tefillin, you make a bracha. Before you put on the towels, you make a bracha. So you have to do a mitzvah, the Gemara learns out, you have to make a bracha before you do the mitzvah. So you're going to make a bracha on tzedakah, so you're giving it to a poor man. You're going to al mitzvah tzedakah. And then the guy will say, no, I don't want it. So then you made a bracha in vain. So because of that, there's a rule. The Rashba gives a general rule. Any mitzvah which is dependent on somebody else, then you can't make a bracha on the mitzvah. But we always discuss there's a chassidische reason why you don't make a bracha on tzedakah. And that is, if a person's a chassid and a poor man comes to him to ask him for money, so he's going to say, oh yeah, I have to make a bracha. So he has to go to the mikveh first. Then he has to go wash his hands. He has to put on his hat and jacket and the gartel. He's going to make a bracha, such a holy mitzvah with a bracha. But then the poor person might drop dead. So therefore, the Chassidish answer why there is no bracha on tzedakah, because there's no time for a bracha. The guy's asking for money, forget the brachas, just give the guy the money. There's a famous story in the Gemara with Nachum Ish Gamzel, who was the Rebbe of Rabbi Akiva, the Gemara says, one of the Rebbes, and he once came back from a trip, and he had his donkeys loaded up, suitcases, and that's what they had, and the donkeys, and the poor man came to him and said, I need tzedakah, I haven't eaten for days. So Nachum said to him, you know what, let me just unload the donkey, and I'll give you the money. So he unloaded the donkey, and by the time he finished, the guy died. Mamish, he fell down dead in front. He hasn't eaten for many days. So Nachum Ish Gamzel said, and he was a tzaddik, so it happened. He said the eyes that saw this person needing money and didn't give it to him should go blind. The feet that didn't go run to do the mitzvah should go crippled. The hands, he cursed his whole body, and after that he was a total cripple. Because he realized that, what did he do over here? The guy asked for some food to eat. You don't say, okay, come back later. You have to give it right away. So that's the Chassidish reason why you don't make a bracha on the mitzvah tzedakah, because there's no time to make a bracha. Okay, next. Now, how much tzedakah does somebody have to give? So it says in halacha you have to give it kfi misas yodei, based on what your means are. You have an obligation to give tzedakah, whatever your means are. The more means you have, but the din is, even a poor man who receives tzedakah also has an obligation to give tzedakah, because there's somebody needier than him. And if he is compared to the poor guy that takes tzedakah, is compared to the worse off guy, he's richer. So therefore, he has to give tzedakah. And based on this, the Rebbe explains a very interesting Chabad concept, so to speak. The Rebbe said that somebody, when you go teach other Jews, go talk to them about Yiddishkeit, so a guy will say, I'm not learning it myself. How do you expect me to go teach a class to other people? I'm myself going to classes to learn. How do you expect me to go teach others? So the Rebbe said this is a din in physical tzedakah, and the same is in spiritual tzedakah. In physical tzedakah, if you have 2 cents and the other guy doesn't have a penny, you give him a penny. You only have 2 cents, but you still have to give tzedakah because there's somebody who is less fortunate than you. The same thing the Rebbe said, you know Aleph? That's all you know, the letter Aleph. And another Jew doesn't know Aleph, go give him Aleph, go teach him Aleph. You're a total illiterate compared to this guy who doesn't know Aleph, you're a scholar. And that's the din, you have to give tzedakah based on the value, a person's ability. Okay, he has okay, we're going to continue, so I have to go.